His name is Creek Stewart, and he is the author of the book, The Disaster Ready Home. On the line with us this morning, our conversation brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. He's in Carmel, Indiana, as he talks with us this morning, where their weather is not all that different from what we're experiencing here. Creek, good morning.
Good morning, and thanks so much for the opportunity to be on.
It's good to have you on the air with us. You jam-packed this book, The Disaster Ready Home, with everything we need to know. It's all about preparing to shelter in place, which has become a term that we're quite familiar with now, as we've heard in the last 2-3 years, maybe in a different way than traditionally we might think of for sheltering in place, though, huh?
Yeah, that's right. And it really has been the last 2 or 3 years that was the catalyst for writing this book. When the pandemic started, I got so many inquiries and emails about preparing for disasters at home that I decided there was a really great spot in the market for people who were just getting started for some real practical and applicable advice.
And we should realize and let people understand why it is that people said, you know what, we got to do this, and it's something that we should get done for our families. I'm going to call Creek Stewart. Why would they call you Creek?
Well, I've been teaching disaster preparedness and survival skills for over 2 decades, with the past 15 years having a focus on disaster preparedness skills in particular. I host a couple of shows for the Weather Channel, and I have written over 20 books on survival and disaster preparedness.
And you also are a winner of the Outstanding Eagle Scout Award. That's no small thing right there.
You know, I'm one scouter that really took that motto of be prepared to a whole other level.
Yeah. Well, Creek, let's talk about the way you constructed the book, The Disaster Ready Home. Be prepared with food, water, heating, and sanitation. Those 4 things are real linchpins for you in the book, but for us when we consider what we need to do in order to make ourselves ready should disaster come.
That's right. So when most people start down the path of preparedness, they think about food first. And so I start the book off with food, and I'd like to share just some really great advice when it comes to putting together a long-term food storage pantry, whether it's for a couple of weeks or a couple of months for you and your family. I always recommend making a list of the top 10 or 20 items that you eat on a regular basis that has a shelf life of 1 to 3 years. So these are the inner aisle grocery store items like canned goods or pastas or boxed meals. And when you come up with that list of 10 or 20 items, each time you go to the grocery store, I want you to pick up just a few extra of some of those items. Doesn't have to be all of them. And over several trips to the grocery store, you are going to build a collection of backup food that has a shelf life of 1 to 3 years that you can enter into rotation in your kitchen pantry. So when you run out of stuff in the kitchen, you're going to pull it from your long-term food storage pantry, and you're going to have a buffer of food in no time on a budget that you know you're going to eat. None of it's going to go to waste.
That rotation is really important, isn't it?
It is. It's critical, and it's the only long-term food storage plan that actually makes sense for most people.
Now, we're talking food there, and the section on food is just amazing, the various options that are available for us there. Water is even more important, I think, anyway, as we consider it. It's all important. It's all essential for us, but water is something that we just can't go very long without.
That's right. And the average American right now uses over 80 gallons of water per day. And so when it comes to water, I like to recommend a 3-phase plan. The first is to have some fresh water stores on hand, about 2 weeks per person, and have 2 gallons per person per day for about 2 weeks. That's about as much as most people are gonna be able to store. And that can be in bottled water, that can be in gallons or 5-gallon jugs. You can just buy that stuff at the grocery store, and it's going to last up to 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's the first phase. The second phase is you want to have a really good water filter. I recommend the Big Berkey. You can pour pond water or creek water or snow or rain in the top of this gravity-fed filter, and it's going to come out of the other side safe to drink.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's 2. What's the third phase?
The third one is a renewable source of fresh drinking water. And the most practical and affordable solution for most people is going to be a rain barrel, especially in Pennsylvania where you get a lot of rain.
Mm-hmm.
If you hook up a rain barrel to one of your downspouts, you are going to create instantly, for about $40, a renewable source of drinking water, and it's going to solve a lot of your problems in that department.
You're going to be amazed by how much a single rainstorm will bring, too, aren't you?
That's right. I mean, just 1 inch of rain it's just hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water off of a roof. It'll fill a 55-gallon drum in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, and you do something else in it. You take it even further by talking about drilling your own well, and yes, that's quite complicated and physically it is demanding on some. But for some, that will be a real solution. Should this turn into more than just a month or so, that water need is really amazing. And maybe if you're building a camp, that's a good idea anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you make a good point. I start really, really simple with things that people can implement right now on a budget. I found out a long time ago that the more complicated and more expensive something is, the least likely someone is to actually do it. And so I have all of those easy things in the book, and I have for people who want to dig a little bit deeper, no pun intended with the well, but you can, I've got that stuff too.
Craig Stewart is with us. The book is called The Disaster Ready Home. We're talking about the various sections of the book, much, much more detail within each of those sections than we're able to give you at this time. But Craig, I want to move on to a couple of other items. One is heating. Particularly should say our power go out for a couple of weeks here, and we are in a situation where we really need to keep ourselves warm. What should we be doing?
Well, over 80% of homes are grid-tied heat, whether it's gas or electric, and we all know how fragile those systems can be in the event of a variety of natural disasters. So having a backup heating source on hand is a really, really smart idea. The easiest to implement is a kerosene space heater. They're about $150. Kerosene fuel is readily available either by the gallon or in bulk delivery, and it will last a very, very long time. It will outlive you. You don't have to add stabilizers. It will last a very, very long time in a shed or garage or even outside in the corner of your yard. These kerosene space heaters are approved for indoor use. They can not only prevent the pipes from freezing, but they can keep you warm as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, there are many, many other sources of heat. I have to tell you, Creek, your wife does not look thrilled in the picture of you and her with the crosscut saw.
Yeah, we have a slightly alternative workout regimen.
She just does not look like she wants to be there doing that at that time. But that does make the point that we often are required to make certain sacrifices in order to cede to our basic needs, and you're doing this for your family as much as, and even more so than for yourself.
Well, my motivation is, almost 100% for my family. When I had kids 5 or 6 years ago, preparedness took on even an entirely new meaning for me, and I've been doing this for over 20 years. And I think a lot of parents can relate to that, who have kids, and now they have more people to think about than just themselves. And so all of a sudden, having some basic supplies at home begins to feel like a lot of common sense.
Absolutely. Makes absolutely perfect sense. All right, the one area that I want to get to, I'm sure that we get to before we get out of here this morning, is sanitation. And again, a lot of these would translate to if you were building a hunting camp somewhere, and these techniques would work there as well. But sanitation is something that we might not think of when we're thinking long term, but all of a sudden you get into a situation and you say, oh boy, we should have been ready for this. So what are the things, the basics we need to know about sanitation?
Well, it's the one topic that hardly anyone considers until it's too late. And if you don't have a way to safely contain and dispose of human waste, then that could be a real issue, a real health issue really quickly if you're trapped at home. And so I can solve that problem for everybody listening for about $20 and very little effort. Go to your local hardware store, buy a plastic 5-gallon bucket, and then order a plastic 5-gallon bucket snap-on toilet seat lid. It's going to cost you about $15 from a retailer like Amazon. And when you've got those two pieces, go to your local wood shop or hardware store and ask them for their leftover sawdust, and they'll give that to you for free. put about an inch in the bottom of that bucket. You're going to go number 1 and number 2 right on top of that sawdust, and then cover it up when you're done. And you're going to keep doing that until the bucket's about full. Then you can snap on a lid and slide that bucket over into the corner of your garage or outside safely. And in a couple of months, that's going to be humanure, composted humanure that's going to be safe to dump out in the corner of the yard or in the woods or something like that. And it's a perfect backup solution to using the bathroom if all of a sudden you can't flush the toilet.
Yeah, and with the number of sawmills around this area, it shouldn't be any problem for people to get sawdust.
Yeah.
There is so much in here, Creek, that we really should spend some time talking about. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Storage of all of this is a really big topic, so we'll recommend people get the Disaster Ready Home by Creek Stewart. I want to thank you for joining us this morning. This has been informative, number one, but it's fun, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people really enjoy putting these preps in place. As you know, they're good on all types of levels.
Absolutely. Creek Stewart, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
Have a great day.
You too.
It is Indiana in the Morning on WCCS. WCCS.